Hello everyone and welcome back to another Limbus Company video. Today we're going to be beating Rien with the brand new House of Spiders Ryoshu, which, let's be honest, it's not that particularly difficult to beat this fight with only her. I mean, with the fact that she is quite literally designed to be used on her own effectively, and the fact that she should be able to beat all of the nurse fathers on her own no matter what. It's fitting that she can solo this fight incredibly easily. However, there is an asterisk next to that easily, because Rien's fight is still a absolute nightmare of a fight. Because the only way to actually beat him solo is if you have an evade. If you don't have an evade, you can't beat him, because his Furioso attack is the defining feature that makes this fight particularly difficult. It does not activate any defense skills, and the fact that it has unbreakable coins means that you need to tank the full brunt force of that attack, no matter what, guaranteed. And because of how much damage it does, even when you do win a clash against it, it can be slight RNG as to whether or not you're actually capable of surviving it because of the random damage and random crits that come from it. But more importantly is the fact that even if you do manage to survive that attack, you can only ever survive one of them. So this entire fight basically boils down to, for the first half, you have to maintain enough health to be able to survive the first Furioso, and then once Rien has used that attack, the rest of the fight becomes a DPS race to prevent him from using a second one. And thus, you have to be an identity with an evade in order to actually solo this fight, because all of his coins are unbreakable coins. And because you need to maintain your health for that Furioso attack, it basically means you cannot afford to take any damage whatsoever from him outside of that single Furioso. This identity, however, has a bit of a boon that most other Ryoshu identities cannot claim to have, and that is the fact that she has an invincibility mechanic built into her kit, where the first time she takes lethal damage, she cannot die for a single turn, and that makes it so that she is the only one of Ryoshu's identities out of any of them that can actually tank two Furiosos. And that alone is enough for her to be able to beat this fight much easier than the rest, because she just has a lot more wiggle room when it comes to her health. Not that she even really needs to tank a second Furioso, because she has more than enough damage to be able to bypass it entirely. So yeah, this fight, very easy. Well, not very easy, but easy enough, despite the absolute metric ton of stress that comes from praying that you don't miss a random 5% evade roll. But other than that, pretty easy. Something else I want to talk about, and I think that this video is one of the perfect opportunities for me to do so, is to discuss my thoughts on Kanto 9 as a whole. And I'd like to start by saying that if I had to rank it amongst all of the other Kantos, excluding the first two because I don't really see them as full Kantos, I would rank it as the third to the bottom, just above Kanto 3 and 4. And that's not to say that Kanto 9 is bad. I think all of the Kantos are really good quality and have a lot going on for them. However, Kanto 9 does have some significant weaknesses that, but I can't help but feel like bring it down substantially. And there is no greater example of these weaknesses that I talk about than to discuss two of the main antagonists of Matthias and Callisto. Both of them have absolutely zero lines of dialogue that they exchange between themselves and Ryoshu outside of flashbacks. Two of the main antagonists, two of the main people that have defined Ryoshu's backstory, do not interact with her at all. And the reason why that is the case is because they are instead focused on developing the B plot of Kanto 9, that being the whole Limbus company raid. Matthias is effectively there to showcase the LCD and how strong they are, while Callisto is there to facilitate Sinclair's personal development and also the LCE. And because their role is to facilitate those plots instead of Ryoshu's, it sacrifices any of their interaction with Ryoshu, and thus it makes it so that her actual character development, or I should say her actual character arc in this Kanto, is substantially weaker as a result. In fact, it's so weak that the intervallo of twinning threads after her Kanto felt more of an extension of Kanto 9 rather than its own separate intervallo. And that is because it actually focused on developing the relationship between Callisto, Matthias, and Ryoshu. Something that should have been done in the original Kanto. And they're not the only ones that also fall into this category, as Valencina also has very little interaction when it comes to Ryoshu. She, at the very least, exchanges a few lines of dialogue at the very start of the Kanto, but it's very surface level and doesn't really have much depth to it. And the reason why is because, just like the other two Nurse Fathers, she is basically there to facilitate Gregor's character arc. And as a result, she has nothing to contribute to Ryoshu. It's just like, could you imagine if in Kanto 6, Hindley and Linton did not have even a single line of dialogue between themselves and Heathcliff? Or in Kanto 7, where Dulcinea and the barber just are never in the same room as Don Quixote? I'm not saying that what they were used for in Kanto 9 was bad. In fact, it is very, very good, and I did enjoy all three of their events. But to sacrifice a good portion of your antagonistic force against your main character to facilitate something that is honestly completely irrelevant to the main story being told, it just doesn't sit right with me. Ryoshu should have been more present in the entire thing, and she just wasn't. It felt more like Limbus Company's Kanto than Ryoshu's. And as a result, the ending is honestly a little unsatisfying for me because Ryoshu succumbing and becoming what the Nurse Fathers built her to be, it feels slightly unearned, as, you know, like I said, 3 of the 5 Nurse Fathers contribute literally nothing to that plot. It's still good, but it would have been a lot better if they pushed the B plot further into the background. Or at least had Ryoshu herself actually contribute to the B plot, instead of separating them so drastically from one another. Anyway, that's about all I have to say, so enjoy the rest of the fight.
소리 없이 손뼉치고 목소리 없이 배웠어. 여덟, 앞으로 하나. 얼어붙은 피를 길게 휘감고.
그려낸 대로. 몰아치는 것은 저지가
얼어붙은
없는
피를 길게 휘감고
낮도 밤도 지워 숨이 닿도록 베어낼 뿐. 죽는다 해도 끊어지지 않나. 그려낸 대로. 낮도 밤도 지워 숨이 닿도록 베어낼 뿐.
얼어붙은 피를 길게 휘감고
낮도 밤도 지워 숨이 닿도록 베어낼 뿐.
네프 완료.
이 순간이 닿도록 베어내리라.
끊어낼 수 없는 거야, 딸. 제 멋대로 끊어버리면 안 되는 거라고.
끊어야만 해. 멋대로 이어진 실들에 짓눌려 먼저 죽기 전에 이 검으로 전부 끊어내야 한다고! 그려낸 대로.
Anyway, that's it for me. Like and subscribe for more videos like this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.